name's Andrew McLeod. I was Chief Executive Officer for 17 years at Engineers and Geoscientists New Brunswick. I started on April Fool's Day of 2002 and I guess ended on March 22nd of 2019. Well, my mother was executive director back in 1980 to 88, and some weekends she would ask me to come in and do some work for the association. And I can remember thinking that this was the greatest job in the world, and she was the first non-engineer to run the association, and I was the second. So it was kind of interesting that mother-son ran the association for 25 years. So Mom did from 80 to 88, and then Huntley Wishart was there, then Eddie Kinley, and then Brian Barnes and myself. In 1920, Charles Conyers Kirby, or C.C. Kirby as we know him, I don't know if he created the association, but he was the first president in 1920, and 92 engineers were licensed to practice that year in New Brunswick, and they formed the association, I think, to really to regulate the profession, to sort of maintain sort of knowledge standards, and to the sort of set for practice, abilities or skill, and then to ensure that there was professional ethics, and all of that to ensure that the public was served and protected. We have pictures back from 1920, and there was definitely no female members at that time. And but like I say, I think Charles Kirby, or C.C. Kirby, did a lot at that time. He came over from England in 1908, and eventually became the city engineer for St. John. And like I say, was involved in the Engineering Institute of Canada at the time, but also with APEGNB, Association of Professional Engineers of New Brunswick. But he also created Engineers Canada. In 1936, along with 8 other provinces, they created the Dominion of Professional Affairs, or what became Engineers Canada. And he was the first president for 3 years. And what's interesting is that in New Brunswick, we've had 7 presidents of the national body. That's the most in Atlantic Canada. Like I say, we had the first, and we've had the most from Atlantic Canada. Well, at the time, government was sort of delegating their responsibility for the oversight of the professions, and what they did was they trusted a certain amount of professions to regulate it on their own, and so the engineers were one of those bodies. They felt that they could regulate themselves, handle complaints, discipline, accreditation of the members, and making sure that they practiced with ethics and protected the public. Been many, but I would say one of the major ones was in 2006 when we moved into our new building. I had worked on years to convince council not to rent anymore, that we could build our own building as engineers. It would look good if we had our own building, but it was finding a site that was difficult, and we finally found our current site, but it was a brownfield site. It had been an Ultramar bulk plant, and so there was a lot of contamination in the ground. That was cleaned by Ultramar, and when we built our building, like I say, it was something that sort of brought us to the forefront, I thought, in professions in Fredericton, because there was a lot of professions that sort of called me and said, we want to buy our own building and build our own building. What did you do? And so we were able to guide a lot of other professions, but it really was a sort of a good thing for our association at the time. Another highlight was engineers had been responsible for the projects for infinity. We sort of called it limitation of liability. And so they were responsible for any project they worked on for their lives and their children's lives. And so we worked a lot of years with government to bring in a limitation of liability. And in 2009, we were able to bring in a ultimate limitation of 15 years. So, if there was a problem happened after 15 years, and they were no longer held liable for that. And that was great for our members. We did an MLA night in 2007. I was in Saskatchewan, and I heard that the executive director did an MLA night where their council would meet with MLAs. So I came back, we instituted that, and we did it for 12 years. This is our 13th year this year, and that was very good for our members, our council members, to meet with our MLAs and have a chance to sort of talk to them about what the profession was doing and what we were looking for. It was really never a difficult ask. It was more just a chance for them to to sort of meet and talk and have a good evening. In 2015, we did our solar project. Thanks to President Paul Campbell, who had a real interest in solar. We were able to put 60 solar panels on the roof of the building. I enjoyed it because it was new to me, but it was also a chance for the engineering profession to show leadership to their members. At the time, we were the largest solar array in the province. But what was nice is that we wanted to be beat. We wanted other projects to be done, and after that, it happened pretty quickly. Fredericton High School and a few other projects were done, and then we were no longer the largest solar array. Another one that was for me was exciting was our act in 2015. The Engineers and Geoscience Professions Act hadn't been redone since 1999, and we had a lot of things we wanted to change, and so working with government. New Brunswick is special in that we're the only province that has private member bills to determine their acts. Other provinces are sort of governed by a department of government that they report to, but in our province we get to write our own act. It is then reviewed by the Department of Justice and an all-party committee, and then it's given 3 readings in the House and it becomes law, and that was really interesting to 2015, bringing that into place. Well, the Act is what regulates what we do as a regulatory body. In '99 was special because that's when the engineers brought the geoscientists into the fold. We were AIGNB before that, then we were APEGNB, adding the geos, and so we were able to give them the opportunity to be regulated and to be considered as professionals. Geologists before that were just working in the province but really had no licensing or regulation. The idea for the video for me started when we did our first Fellow of Engineers Canada celebration. I'm not sure what year they brought it in, but they were recognizing presidents in all of the country, and so we brought in all of our living past presidents for an evening, and at that evening I had the opportunity to meet a lot of old presidents or older presidents, and I got to have a chance to hear them and to talk stories, and so I sort of put it in the back of my mind that when our 100th anniversary came around, that it was a chance for us to interview and to get the history onto tape of what these people had experienced. I think it's going to be exciting for the members and the public to watch it. Yes, we started in St. John at, if Bill Barrett will, if you listen to Bill Barrett and Tim tell the story at where Harbour Station is right now, then we always had our AGMs or annual meetings at the Admiral Beatty Hotel in St. John. That's where they always were held. Then we moved to Fredericton. We were on York Street. We're there for a lot of years when my mom was executive director. Then we moved to Beaverbrook Court. When I took over, we were there. And then we moved to Hanwell Road, where we currently are now. I think when Mom was there, I think it was pretty male-dominated. She was probably the only woman on council at the time, and we hadn't had a female president at that time, and so it was sort of an old boys club, but I think they were able to do a lot of good things. Back then there was only 2 years of work experience needed. Now there's 4 to be licensed. We've gone from sort of doing your law and ethics course at the university to now you have to write an online course, multiple choice, and so that's new. We've improved our accreditation process that we credit universities, and it's something that's very important, is that when you graduate from engineering from any Canadian institution that offers engineering, you're at the same point and can be licensed in any Canadian province. We have improved the knowledge standards, what is required of a graduating engineer and the amount of courses that they take, and all those things have changed since 1980. I would say in 1920 we probably had, probably no staff possibly. I'm not sure if they were all volunteers at the time. I know we did have a Miss Andrew. She was our bookkeeper, and she was our only employee for a lot of years. And When she left, we agreed that we would pay her a pension for the remainder of her life. And when I came, it was always we'd send off the checks, and I'd always wonder if she was still getting them. But I finally cut them off one day, and I got a call from her son saying, no, she's still alive. She was in her late 90s, but she was still, still getting paid from the time that she worked for the association. And then we grew to, when my mother was there in the 80s, she had a staff of herself and 2 others. When I started in 2002, we had a staff of 6, and now we're up to a staff of 8. So it is growing because there's just more to do. We're growing in the numbers, of members, and it's just, you have to sort of adapt to the change, I guess. I think the memory that I take the most is that when I was hired, I was a non-engineer. And so when I went to my first national meetings, I was not really spoken to by a lot of the CEOs or executive directors. I was sort of ostracized a little. It was probably after about a year that they started taking me serious and realized that I was still going to be there. And but Hollis Cole, he was the one person that really believed in me and believed that the executive director or CEO could be a non-engineer. As he always said, if I needed an engineer, I had 5,000 engineers to ask a question to. And so he was really supportive, and I always thank him for that as my mentor. And but like I say, I was at an Ontario annual meeting, and my wife and I sat down at one of the tables, and the CEO of Ontario came up and said, "Sorry, you're not allowed to sit there." And I said, "Oh, is there a reason?" He goes, "Oh, that's just for other presidents and other CEOs." And I said, "Okay." And I started to move, and my president at the time, Al Giberson, said, "If he's moving, we're moving." So the 4 of us moved to the back of the room. We had our lunch, and like I say, I was never treated that poorly again, but it was a little embarrassing at the time to be not respected by, the largest association in Canada. But, like I say, a few years later, he did come back and apologize, and that was nice to see. I had a great staff. I mean, they were very good. Rachel Christensen, 27 years doing that job that she's been doing. And, she was always very supportive of me, always helped me out whenever I needed it. And we had long-serving employees. So I think that sort of the camaraderie with them, I became friends with a lot of the presidents that I had the honor to serve with, and we traveled a lot, and I'm hoping that those friendships will continue after. But I think it's, as they say, it's the people you're going to miss the most. I think it's going to take a little while to, I figured I was going to drive to the office a few times this week, like I say, being in a new position, but I'll always remember it as a blessing. Like I say, my mother lasted for 8 years, and she was the longest serving executive director. And when I passed that, it was a nice feeling, and never thought that I'd get to 17 years, but I just felt that it was time. Like I say, we're celebrating 100 years next year, and I think it's time for somebody younger to lead us into the next century.